I guess it's just my way of being me. You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome to think of it. Hey, honestly, I could go on and on. I could explain every natural phenomenon. Ha! The tides, the grass, the ground. Oh, that was me. I was messing around. I couldn't kneel. I buried his guts. Swallowed a tree. Now you got coconuts sprouted. What's the lesson? What is the takeaway? Don't mess with my wearing his on a breakaway. And the tapestry here in my skin. It's a mat for the victories I win. Look where I've been. I make everything happen. Look at the mimima with the ticky tap 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 tap. Ha ha ha. Hey! Well, let me say, you're welcome. Blah, 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 blah. Hey Robin, so you may actually want to know that I'm continuing to read A Song of Ice and Fire, which means that I'm continuing to read Game of Thrones, which means that I'm still enjoying the vast world that this series presents, which means that I'm still interested in war, history, and all things medieval. But one thing that I'm interested in right now is titles, because the fact is that in Game of Thrones there are a lot of characters that have titles. There you have all the sirs, all the princes, all the kings, all the dames, all the consorts, all the servants. There are a lot of titles, and right now I'm considering what those titles mean, which means that I of course started investigating. And while I was investigating, I started to think about Victoryville, because I normally think about Victoryville because I have a lot of things in my mind about this channel and what we do here, and I am just in love with this. So I have it in my mind a lot of times. Because the fact that Victoryville represents a place, because it's a ville, yes, I know that Victoryville should be written like this, instead of how we write it, but when we baptized this channel we didn't want to undermine any of the last names, so we decided to give them the same use and to use the meaning of Ville so that it would represent the place, even though it's not written grammatically correct. But it's just our way of writing the same idea. And thinking about how our channel represents a place, and having... ¡Ay, se fue la luz! Nos vamos a morir. Sorry for the technical difficulties, the lights went out on my house and well, it's now fixed, so I'm gonna record. I realized that since our channel's branding is as a country, we could have our own titles, and we could give our own titles, and we could be the authorities that give the titles. And so, investigating and dreaming about giving titles, I came up with this. And without further ado, welcome to Victoryville. So I started by looking at a list of all the titles that have ever existed. Or, I mean, whatever Wikipedia gave me as a list of all the titles that have ever existed. The links of everything are in the description, so if you want to check them out, just go to the description, but yeah. And in that list, the titles were classified according to different characteristics. For example, function, which could be executive, judicial, legislative, administrative, or ceremonial. And out of those, I didn't care for none of this. I cared only for ceremonial, because all of the other ones gave power to the one that held the title. And so I filtered only the ceremonials. And then I went to the next category, which was how the title is received, which as options had appointed, elected, hereditary, identified, and purchased. Out of those, I only wanted appointed and elected, but I wasn't sure about elected because that determines that there was a participation from a larger crowd, so I took it with a grain of salt. Then the following characteristics were not filters, but they were characteristics that were very, very relevant for the process. Based on what is the title given, which means who is analyzing the person in order to give the title. In this case, it could be a person like the Pope or an organization or a whole society in elections, for example. Here is where we start to define ourselves. In our case, the ones who determine who gets a title are the Council of Founding Fathers of Victoryville, which just means Jordi, Robin, and Raul, but it sounds pretty awesome. And then, by whom is it given? And so, in our case, the one who gives the title is the individual. So for example, if I appoint someone and we authorize it to be, I am the one who is giving him the title, not the entirety of Victoryville, though the title is supported by Victoryville. Yeah? You follow me? This is exciting! And finally, there was the scope of the authority, which was a filter. And the scope of the authority can be a lot of things. It can be personal, tribal, institutional, geographical, and a variety of them. But here I only cared for personal ones, because I am not giving them authority, I'm not giving them a place in Victoryville, or I'm not giving them any power over somebody else, because I have no power to give. So I'm just giving it to personal. It's personal use and it's personal recognition, and it's just for usage of the individual. So with all those filters, I started to check every single title that fit. I ended up checking over 33 titles, and I realized that the appointed titles tend to have some things in common. The fact that they are mostly given by virtue of an achievement that is actually not that achievement at all. They may be given to people that are born in the right place, or that marry the right person, or that have sex with the right person even. But there are exceptions. And some of those exceptions are Gandentripa, Beatification, and High Priest. All of which are based on religious merit. Oh, and I also checked the elected ones, but out of those I only got to see 3, and all of those 3 were not fit for what we wanted. They actually didn't work. They were just useless, and then to realize that these type of titles are not elected at all. In the end, I just went out with 3 titles that we could use, and I actually believe that we're gonna be using them 3, because I really like them. The 3 titles are Venerables, Knights, and Eagle Warriors. First, the Venerable. The Venerable is an epithet in Christian churches which is used as a word of praise. It is given by the Pope and it is done after beatification but before one becomes a saint. And it is given to people who have lived a life of heroic virtue, which of course means the theological virtues of hope, faith, and charity, but also the cardinal virtues of prudence, fortitude, temperance, and justice. Let me explain to you the theological virtues and why we're not going to use them here in Victoryville. Faith is defined as intellect not infused in evidence but in the infallible authority of God. Hope is the confidence and trusting of divine assistance to attain life everlasting. And charity is to cherish God for his own sake and man for the sake of God. The fact is here that the theological virtues do not have something bad about them. They are actually good things to have, but they are focused on the wrong thing. And of course, this is just my opinion and it should not be taken as fact. I have to say that the fact that all those virtues being focused on God is just a negative. I don't want people to be good for the sake of being rewarded by a powerful entity. I want people to be good for the sake of being good. I want people that like to help, no matter what they believe in. They could believe in God, I wouldn't care, it's not important. If a person does a good action in the name of something else than God, I don't want that to be unrewarded because one of our requirements requires people to do them in the name of God. But the venerable is staying because of the cardinal virtues, as defined by Wikipedia. Prudence is the ability to judge between actions with regard to appropriate reactions at a given time, and it is represented by a book, a scroll, or a mirror. Fortitude is the ability to confront fear, uncertainty, and intimidation, and it is represented by an armor, a club, a lion, a palm, a tower, a joke, or a broken column. Temperance is the practice of self-control, abstention, discretion, and moderation, which means sound-mindedness, and it is represented by a wheel, a bridle and reins, vegetables and fish, a cup, water, wine in 2 jugs. And finally, justice is righteousness and fairness, and it is represented by a sword, a balance and scales, or a crown. And Robin, I find these virtues to be something that I truly want people to think about me when I die. I want people to associate me with these virtues, because they are actually really valuable in life. And when one is able to be represented by one or many or all of these virtues, it means that one lived a life that was truly special. A reasonable, fair, sound, and strong life. And that is why I think the Venerable is one of the titles that we are going to give here in Victoryville. The second one is knighthood, which gives the title of sirs and dames. A knight is a person granted the title by a monarch or another political entity because of their service to the country, the crown, or just meritorious achievement. It was traditionally given to the people in a feast on their honor, in which they would perform a ceremony where the knighter, person who knights, would dub the new knight on the shoulders as he proclaimed an oath. Afterwards, knights were expected to fight bravely and to have professionalism on the battlefield and also to show courtesy. And in times of peace, they would commonly demonstrate their martial skills in tournaments in which they held banners with their own house's symbol or just the symbol for the knight itself, which is pretty legendary to me. I love that. There's a thing to be noted here with knights. The fact is that knights are most commonly related to monarchies in our culture, and actually in history they are most commonly related to monarchies. And actually in present day the most prominent knighthood is given by a monarchy, the British monarchy. And so I am actually obliged to start to define the type of government which rules Victoryville. And here's my train of thought. I don't actually know the absolute type of government that we're gonna have in Victoryville, but I have done some research and I found a very promising candidate. I believe that we are a monarchy. Because here's the thing, what is a monarchy? Monarchy is a form of government in which a group embodies the country's national identity, and its head exercises the role of sovereignty. Sovereignty. Yeah, sovereignty. Which actually fits us pretty well. We three are a group of people which embody the nation's identity. And also, we are the ones who make the decisions. We are sovereign here. We are actually the only ones ruling. But the fact is that I wouldn't want us to be the only ones ruling. When we start to make decisions to improve the world, and when we start donating, and when we start to be more impactful in any way that we are, I wouldn't want us to be the only ones making the decisions. So I started digging inside monarchies, and I realized that there are types of monarchies. Absolute monarchies, most common in the past, symbolic monarchies, like the one in England, and constitutional monarchies, which also could be the one in England, but in a constitutional monarchy, the sovereign exercises authority in accordance to a constitution, which is actually what I would like. Even though we don't have the constitution yet, we would have to write a constitution. But the fact is that in that way, we become the monarchs, as we are, and we would be the ones making the decisions, but we would be accountable by a constitution in our nation. We would be accountable in a way for our constitution, and we would write it down so that we can include people in the making of decisions, but in a way that is not overthrowing us from the fact that we are the founding fathers and that we are the ones making the actions, and so we are the ones who have to have the final say. We could do that. We are going to write a constitution one day, and it's gonna be fun. And finally, the last title that we're gonna give is Eagle Warrior. And Eagle Warriors were sort of the knights of the Aztec culture. A culture which of course has a lot of background in the history of Mexico, which means that has a lot of background in the history of us, Robin, Jordi, and Raul. They were leaders and commanders in and out of the battlefield. They were the most fierce and powerful of all the Aztec warriors. And they were only given this title after showing 20 or more great deeds in their life. These great deeds were of course different than what we would call a great deed right now. They were mostly the ability to not kill an enemy in war and to bring him as a prisoner so that they could sacrifice him later. Because the Aztecs thought that a warrior who killed their enemy in battle was not a very skilled warrior. And also they believed that blood shouldn't be shed freely. They should never waste blood, because blood wasted was blood not given to the gods. And yes, I don't believe that this is the right sentiment to have here, but I think that it is actually kind of noble. The fact that they don't want to give death freely. Yes, they believe that they have to give death to their gods, and that is something that I don't agree with. But other than that, they were forgiving in the battlefield, and they would not kill an enemy if they could keep him alive. That is a philosophy that I truly like, even though it's not what we're gonna require people to do for obtaining this title. We here in Victoryville are going to just focus on the 20 great deeds, which are going to be examined by the Council of Founding Fathers so that we can determine which deeds are actually great deeds. And 20 of them is the number that people have to get so that they can get this title. So that means that we're gonna have those three as titles that we're gonna give. And now that I've explained to you what they are, I'm gonna explain to you the rules and the gifts that come with being awarded this title. First, knights. And to be a Victoryville Knight, you have to have given service to the world and to have achieved meritorious achievement, both of which are going to be defined and determined by the Council of Founding Fathers, which is why you don't need to know the rules now, because we're gonna have those secret rules for us. Another requirement is that they have to be participants in a ceremony in which they would be dubbed by a sword, the Sword of Victoryville, which we're gonna call and have in the future. Not now, but in the future. And the gift for knights is to share a feast, which Victoryville would of course provide, with the member of Victoryville that proclaimed them knights. Or if it's possible, with all the members of Victoryville. Now Eagle Warriors, and they would have to have 20 or more great deeds. Also, those deeds would be dubbed great by the Council of Founding Fathers. And the gifts for being an Eagle Warrior are an eagle-related sort of object and a culturally significant object from the past of the culture of the person obtaining the title. Because Aztecs are part of our background culture, are part of our past, and that is why I want to remind people of their past, of their background, of what their roots are. And finally, the Venerables. And the Venerable title is a posthumous title to be given, because we are going to have to evaluate the whole life of a person which we deem worthy of this title, and we're going to have to evaluate if they have lived by these virtues. If they significantly achieve at least one of them throughout their lifetime, they are able to be called venerables. But the difference will be marked on their gift, because the gift for a venerable is a banner in which they are visually represented. It would be joined visually by the symbol of the virtues they had throughout their lives. So if someone had all four, they would be joined by four symbols, which represents those virtues. If they had just one, they would be joined by just one. And that is the gift that we will give to our venerables, to the people that to us showed heroic virtue in life. Finally, when one of us, Robin, Jordi, me, are giving this honor to a person, we have to say these words. Of course, omitting the ones that do not apply to the particular case. Robin, I'm gonna make the example as if I'm making you part of all of the titles. So, okay, let's go. The sovereign nation of Victoryville, based on the Council of Founders examination and on behalf of Raul Victoria, appoints Robin Villa as the Venerable Eagle Warrior, Sir Robin Villa, Knight of Victoryville. That is it! But before I go, I just want to clear something out. Because this seems a little bit arrogant on my behalf, on our behalf. Because who gave us the authority to judge people and to give them titles? What power do we have? What do we feel like we are? We are just a small channel with 51 subscribers which has no authority, nor power, nor influence to give this judgment to people who are actually right now doing some big change. Who are we to judge? And the thing is that we are no one to judge, and that we do not claim to have an authority, and that we do not claim to be something big. I mean, we hope we get to be big and that this title becomes something of actual relevance. That would be amazing. We are just doing this because we want to bring attention to those people which we feel deserve it. If we find someone who has done 20 great deeds, we want to bring attention to him, and we want people to notice him, and we want people to know who he is. That is why we're doing this. And the why we're doing this like we are doing it is just because it's fun. And I like medieval things, and I like knights, and I like titles, and I like to feel important. It's not that I actually believe I am, but that I want to feel as if I can give titles. So yeah, the final goal of this is just to have people bring their attention to this particular group of people or these persons that we determine to be knights or eagle warriors or venerables, because they deserve the attention. And we have some crowd, we have an audience which can give their attention and maybe haven't given their attention to this. That is the final goal, to bring attention to people who deserve it. And we feel it's a good thing to do. And that's it. So Robin, that was the end of this. And for your challenge. Okay. For your challenge, you're gonna have to give us the basis of rules. By which I mean that you're gonna have to tell us what are the basis for creating rules. Because as I said previously in the video, I want to make a constitution. So if you can find the basis of rules for writing rules, I would be very glad, and that is your challenge. Find them. If you cannot find them, tell me why. But try to, at least. Okay, so yeah, that's it. And Robin, see you whenever I see you. Bye.